It's it's not called audio drama for no reason. There is a lot of drama. It is like the theater kid drama. You get it with fiction podcasting.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Anne Baird, who is many things, wears many, many hats. But they are in the audio fiction world. They're also doing podcast marketing. They're also a mathematics enthusiast and business enthusiast. So we're going to hear from them today a little bit about how they got into the fiction world and marketing and all that good stuff. So welcome, Anne.
Hi, yeah, welcome to me, I guess. Thank you for having me on.
Hey. So excited to talk to you.
I'm realizing I'm usually the one like on the other end of the camera and I was like, "Oh no. Oh no." And it just hit me.
No, that
So,
was perfect. That was perfect, and I see you're repping too with Valence with a T-shirt.
oh yeah, I've got to wear my Valence shirt. I was getting dressed this morning. I'm like,
Nice.
maybe I'll just wear my own podcast merch.
As you should, as you should. So, okay, to get started, before we talk about Valence and all that good stuff, can you share with us your journey of how you got into podcasting in the first place and what made you get into audio fiction and also co-found Hug
Mhm.
House Production?
That's a long story because I actually started listening to podcasts with fiction. And I think that was like the first things I listened to was Welcome to Night Vale back in like 2012. So early days of podcasting, way early days of fiction podcasting. And I remember, going to panels about it at New York Comic Con and like even though that's a big conference, like it was a little thing to have a podcast there. And, events around New York City and just being involved in it on a very low level fan basis. And then I got into college and I was too busy to listen to podcasts. So I stopped listening to podcasts for a few years and then picked up Dungeons and Dragons podcast and started listening to I think the first one I listened to was one that's actually an Australian podcast called D&D is for Nerds. It's very fun. It's very silly. Low rule following in terms of it's Dungeons and Dragons podcast. And then got into the Bright Sessions, which is another big fiction podcast. And then eventually at that point, I started branching out into nonfiction, which is what I mostly listen to now, even though I make fiction podcasts. So my listening started with fiction, tapered off, picked up fiction again, and then kind of shifted into nonfiction. But through, being involved in the Dungeons and Dragons podcast, I made a lot of friends and we're in Discord servers together and meeting up at live shows and talking to people, and eventually met my co-creator and co-founder of Hug House and Valence, Will Williams, through that. And we actually started a tabletop game together, and that's how we became friends and then decided to start Valence based off of our tabletop game. So it was a book before that, and then it became a tabletop game, and now it's a podcast. So it's had so many iterations, but that was really what sparked, getting to work in podcasts and Hug House overall. So
Yeah. I love how you started from being a podcast lover because something that we talked about on the
Mhm.
show with like other people as well, and something that we say I think all the time is podcast
Oh, yeah.
creators don't listen to enough podcasts. So like being a podcast lover in the first place and then creating them helps so much, I'm
Yeah.
sure, in like how you even think of the storytelling and the sound design. So how was
Mhm.
your transition as like from a listener to a creator? How was that journey?
Easier than most because I don't do writing or sound design. I got the easy part. So I just got to review and read the scripts. I got to help out with the casting and, choosing takes on the audio. And I did some directing for season 1 and 2 of the audio. And that was really how I got involved in working in it. And I didn't have to do too much of the nitty gritty work except like make sure we could pay to make it.
Very important, if not one of the most
Very
important.
important. Yeah. So I really my approach into working in podcasting was also as an audience member. It's like, is this something that I want to listen to? Are we making something that I want to put my name on and be a part of? Is it up to my standards of what I would listen to? So really approaching it from a listener audience angle I think helped us make a better product. And, product like it's art, but you're financing it and you're monetizing it. It's a product now.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the audio fiction world. What does it mean for you and the community? And because I see you and we'll talk about it a lot with so much passion and how
Mhm.
many beautiful people there are there. So for those who are listening who are interested in maybe starting a podcast or, getting into that world, what can you tell them about it?
Yeah. It's it's not called audio drama for no reason. There is a lot of drama. It is like the theater kid drama, you get it with fiction podcasting. However, everyone is there because they love the craft and they really love podcasting and fiction podcasting for what it is. The ones I see doing really well are and like having dedicated followings are the ones that are made for audio. And they are making a podcast to be a podcast. They're not looking to turn it into a TV show or make it into a movie or do things like that. And a lot of those people don't make any money doing it and pay out of pocket to, pay their actors because they want to pay people what they're worth. And they lose money on it. But so it's a industry, it's a, group of people who are passionate about what they do and just really, really love it. So that's kind of where we approached it from when we started Hug House was we were passionate from it. We're like, we're probably not going to make any money doing this. We just want to do it. And because there's more than one of us, it's smart business wise for ownership to have us under an LLC. What if we split up? What if we do make money at some point? We were trying to think ahead and not get caught up in, years down the line. Will created Valence originally, so they want all the money from it. It's like, well, I'm working on it too. But
Right. But what you're saying about,
yeah.
like maybe labeling it as a product or having these like safety measures, quote unquote, in place, it's so important even for sustainability because you started out saying, okay, we're not going to make any money or this is not why we're doing it. But
Mhm.
when you do get the money, it's important for the sustainability of it. And also, secondly, it means
Mhm.
that you stay motivated and, you stay consistent because your ultimate goal is not, making money. It's your actual passion for it. Right.
Right, yeah, if we make money, great, if we don't, it's not gonna ruin how much we care about the project and making this podcast. We're still going to make it. I think
Yeah.
we said that on all of our crowdfunding campaigns, like, what are the risks behind it? It's like, well, the risks are we make no money and we pay for it out of pocket.
Hmm.
We're still going to make it. It may just take us a little longer to get the money together to be able to pay the people who are working on the show.
Yeah.
But we're still here to make this art because we believe in it. We believe in its impact on other people, we think we're doing something important and we want other people to be able to hear it no matter what it costs us.
Hmm. And okay, at this stage, looking back to when you started and you had all those things in mind, how do you feel about like where Hug House Productions has come and all the shows that you guys have managed to put out and all of the experience that you got out of it and all the people that you reached?
We have gotten so many emails and messages and responses over, oh gosh, like the 3.5 years of, like, producing Valence specifically, and then our documentary, like, side project Scoring Magic that's talks about, like, us creating Valence, about how much of an impact they've had on people. So, Scoring Magic is us basically being real on audio and talking about, like, "Oh, we did this, and it was a bad idea, and we really messed up, and it screwed up our whole production." And it's still, like, causing issues for us today, the stuff we did back in season 1, and we were like, "I wish we could redo this. I wish we could do it." There's just no way to go back and fix it at this point, and we just have to live with that and try to move forward with it and do the best we can now. And then with Valence, we've gotten emails from people who say, "I'm so glad you covered these themes of, like, family trauma and, depression and, queer issues and stuff that doesn't get brought up in mainstream media that we are able to talk about because it's our company and we can do whatever we want and we can we can make the story. We have all the control, and it's gonna tell a story that we think is important, and it's made an impact, and, people have said it's, like, changed their life to listen to it.
Yeah, I love that. Talk a little bit more about it. How it started out, or was it intentional from the beginning, and how it progressed, and how do you guys, like, put it into your work now at this point when you're, coming out with new seasons, like, coming up with new shows? How does it, like, inform your work and your whole prep for the final
Yeah.
product? Because a lot of work goes into it.
Right, right. So creating, the back end work of creating like a diverse product or a diverse show. What we really want to showcase in our audio drama is that, it's not all a bunch of straight white guys behind a mic. That's not what podcasting is. It's so much more than that. That's what you see. That's the most popular podcasts pretty much everywhere are gonna be, 2 or 3 guys talking in a microphone. And we're like, we can't have that." That's not who we are. So when we were writing our scripts, we took that into account, and we wrote characters that were specifically not cis het straight white guys. We were like, "We're gonna write this character, and this guy's bi, and this guy's trans, and Sarah's black, and he's Hispanic, and like, these people are polyamorous," and we wrote all of it into the script, so it is in the, like, DNA of these characters. And then when we went forward into casting, we were like, "We're not casting somebody to play this Puerto Rican character who is white. We're gonna cast somebody who's Puerto Rican." And we did get people responding to the casting call, putting on terribly fake accents, and you can tell. And it
What?
was it was terrible. Season 1 casting call, we had 11 characters that we put in the casting call. We received over 300 auditions,
That's
and
amazing, though.
it was a lot. Yeah, the 2019 was crazy for podcasting, but we had to really be thoughtful about who we cast in these roles because we wanted to make sure that our cast showed the diversity of the world that we were creating, and that we weren't just putting in the same people that everybody else also casts. So another thing we did was we did blind casting where we had everybody submit through a Google form their audition and all their information, including their name and email address, but a Google form spits out a spreadsheet. So what we did was before anybody submitted everything, we hid the columns that had any personally identifying information from the spreadsheet. So we could still see, like ethnicity, age, who are you auditioning for, have you been in another podcast, not which one have you been in, and then, here's your audition audio. And then do you have any accessibility concerns that, you need us to address or any comments we should know before we listen to your audio? Um, so we didn't know going in who some of these people were, even though we got through the casting process and we're like, "Oh, we know them. I love them." But we didn't realize it till afterwards because we didn't want to show preference to the top names in fiction podcasting. We didn't wanna look at a list of people auditioning and go, "Oh, I know they're good. I'm gonna cast them."
Yeah, that's
So we
huge,
made it.
and that's so
Yeah.
intentional, and I feel like that's what makes really, like, your show so special because of all the thought that you put into it that even goes from, like,
Mhm.
maybe it seems like little details, but something like that that's just, like, a core value of what you guys do.
Yeah, and we let the once we had everyone cast, we let the actors read through the scripts, and if they had any thoughts on what their character would or wouldn't do based on, their personality or, like, Will and I are white. So we're writing characters who are black, and we're like, "Oh, no, we don't have that lived experience." So we're like, "Hey, listen, if we write something that you think is wrong or your character would never say that, let us know and we will change it." And we had sensitivity readers for scenes that had protests in them. We hired Tuck Woodstock to give us some feedback on how to, handle protest writing and, what it's like to be in them, especially with everything that happened in, mid 2020. We wanted to make sure we were being conscious of all of that. We had one of our trans voice actors review the script for scenes that focused on that theme. So we knew we were trying to very intentionally approach it from, we are not of this group of people, and we wanna make sure that we aren't doing something super insensitive and that everybody can actually feel seen by this.
Yeah, I love that, and, like, you guys are amazing because all of these things, I mean, I've never done audio drama, audio fiction. I haven't done any work in that, but it's so many things that I would have never thought of, and that I'm sure, and you can probably attest, a lot of, other people that make audio drama don't think of.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So you guys are so amazing for looking at each one of those elements, and that's one of the things that I was gonna ask you more about. So, I mean, considering that you guys approach so many topics and you're being so intentional about how you do that, kind of what your process is and how you make sure that you do that. You've talked a little bit about it, that you hire, external people to maybe like even fact check, or you
Mhm.
directly ask the cast to like look at the writing. So yeah, what are some other things that you do along the process? Maybe even as you're writing, or as you're, maybe in the final stages of
Um,
production even, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, we try to, like, triple, quadruple listen to episodes to make sure that they're, the quality we want before they go out. We do transcripts for our fiction podcasts to make sure that the transcripts match not only the exact wording of what is being said, not just like a script where somebody changed a word. It will match exactly what is being said in the audio. But we also try to make sure we have audio descriptions of sound effects and music and tone of voice and anything that might not be able to come across in text, because we wanna make sure that our content is accessible to everyone. And then we post the transcripts both embedded in the page, so that on our pages on our website for the episode, so that if you know, open up the page, it's gonna stay downloaded, or we allow to, download like a PDF, or I think we upload it as a Google Doc that's not editable, so that if they wanna make a copy of it and change the font size or change, the spacing for, if somebody wants to change it for their own viewing, they can absolutely do that. Not to mention it's good for your SEO to have it on the website, because if anybody searches any of the search terms or any words from your episode, boosts you up on Google.
Pro tip, SEO. Yes, yes. And that's something that I was gonna
That's
oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was gonna ask about the marketing side of it. Like, do you also, like have specific ways about going about the marketing side of the shows that take into consideration like all the things we talked about so far?
Yeah. So a lot of what we did with marketing for the show in early seasons and ongoing, and we're still doing even though the show has wrapped, is we did promo swaps with other fiction podcasts, and we do feed drops for other shows all the time, just to take advantage of, the audience we have or the audience other shows have, and kind of share share in the love for fiction podcasting. I don't see other fiction podcasters as my like competitors. I know some people do view it that way, especially once you get more corporatized. They're like, if they're listening to this podcast, they're not listening to this podcast. Like, I don't think you understand.
That's
I
not
look
how
at
it
fiction
works.
podcasts and go, a buffet, amazing. I'm going to have all of it. Like I'm going to have a little bit of everything. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you're confident
Um,
in your product too, you're not gonna think that, oh, your listeners, if you just tell them about a different podcast, they're never gonna listen to yours again. Especially because it's fiction, right? Like you get involved in the story, you're not
yeah.
gonna leave.
Right, like, watch how many historical fiction shows will I go watch that cover the same exact topics? It's like, I've watched 7 shows about Anne Boleyn fictionalized in different ways, and I'm still gonna watch another one that comes out and be like, "Oh, here's another one." Like, I don't see it as competing, especially when it comes to fiction. So,
Yeah. It's
um
not about competition, it's about collaboration. And that's one of the most important things I
Mhm.
think that we can like share with people listening. If they want to start one, or if they have already started and they're working on one independently, don't even worry about it. Actually make it a part of your marketing strategy and a part of like your just
Yes.
vision about what you're doing.
Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. I will say it a million times. Don't don't try to do it on your own. Please, you will burn yourself out and you'll drive yourself crazy because it's so much work that people don't realize behind the scenes. Like, I'm not the creative brain and Will is not the logistical finance brain. Will doesn't want to look at numbers. So when we come up with a podcast idea, they're like, "I'm just gonna make it, and I'm gonna do this, and I've already created show art, and I'm gonna start recording." And I'm like, "Oh my god, how are we gonna pay for this immediately? And what's the production schedule? And how is this gonna affect everything else you're doing? And what is going on?" So, you have to have everybody who's working together.
Yes, for sure. And even if it's like you were talking about making podcast friends and everything, like even exchanging ideas with another podcaster, with another creator is so valuable and it's going to add so much to your work that you will only realize
Mhm.
that once you do it. And along
Yeah.
those lines, what I wanted to ask you is how do you find the shows or how do you choose the shows that you want to work with? We don't have to go into the practical part of it, like, where you find them on, we use that thing, Podchaser,
Yeah.
Raphonic, all those things. No, more like
Yeah,
which
yeah.
creators do you go to and how do you choose them?
I mean, I usually go to the shows that I like and listen to, or something that's in a similar theme to what I know my podcast is about, because those are gonna be, the best audience matches, and because they're not my competition, I know if I send my podcast to another podcast that has a main character who has electricity powers, like Liam in Valence, they're not my competition, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, have you seen the meme?" Or, like, it's the comic of the guy, and he's like, "How come you get 2 hot dogs?" Have you seen that?
No, but I want to see it now.
Oh, oh my gosh, and it's it's like this old-timey comic, and it's like these 2 kids talk to each other. It's like, "Jimmy, how come you got 2 hot dogs?" It's like, "Yeah, I got 2." That's how I feel about, like, podcasts. I'm like, "Yeah, I get 2 of them. They're the same." But they're different enough, and they both have different values, and they are, they're not the same. And I
Mhm.
like both. I can like 2 similar things.
And do you feel like
So we go for similar shows.
sorry, similar shows?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was going to ask, and I need to find a different way of transitioning questions because I keep saying that. um, but my question is, are download numbers important? Because I'm thinking of some shows that may be smaller or just starting out or like maybe even medium size. Is it as important in audio fiction as in other genres of podcasting, or is there more like leverage space?
So that is the thing that I notice the most between nonfiction and fiction shows, or at least even not even nonfiction shows and fiction shows. People who create fiction versus people who only create nonfiction approach promotional stuff so differently. Like, I'll just put somebody's episode on my feed because I like their show. I don't need anything in return. Or I'll just talk about a podcast at the end, when we're putting the episode together. It's like, "I really liked this show, and we don't have a promo swap for this one. Can I talk about this show?" "Yeah, of course, go for it." And sometimes we don't even tell the other creator. We're like, "We just talked about you. Here you go. We just like your show a lot." But with and we do the same approach to our nonfiction shows because we're coming from the we just wanna bring everybody up world. I'm not in it for necessarily something in return, but a lot of the bigger companies in fiction podcasting now are, because they can do dynamic insertion now, and are in it for ad revenue and also have ad slots with big, partners. They are wanting to count downloads more. So whereas with the smaller shows, they're more willing to somebody who gets 500 downloads versus somebody who gets 5,000 downloads. If they're independent, they don't even ask. They don't even ask. We just did a campaign for a client at Tink for a fiction podcast, and we're getting some promo swaps and some feed drops set up between seasons for him. And none of our pitches included numbers, and none of the hosts we filled up 1 feed swap per
They
week
are
for this guy
pouring
up
in, I
until the
heard.
release of his they're pouring in. It's so much. We're like, "We're gonna have to tell people no. I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
And none of them have asked about download numbers. They're just saying like, "Yeah, I'll do it.
Mhm.
No problem. Let's do the swap. Here's my" they send their feed audio. They're like, "Yeah, okay, here it is."
Yeah.
They don't even ask. They just send it over.
That's
So,
amazing because it's about the
I
content, right?
love it. Right, it's about the love of the content and the, medium. Everyone's like, "I love fiction podcasts. I want my listeners to be able to find other shows." So, they want more people listening to podcasts because the more people know about fiction podcasts, the more people who listen to fiction podcasts, that brings everybody up. The more there's a higher chance of every fiction podcast being found if it's talked about in mainstream media more. So why wouldn't I be willing to shout out a smaller show if it means somebody's going to listen to this smaller show and maybe on that smaller show they'll hear about another one. And then on that other one, maybe they find one that they want to tell their friend about and their friend starts listening to fiction podcasts. So eventually it that's what I love about the community.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and like you're saying, it's literally about the content, it's about bringing in more listeners, it's about like, it's bigger
Mhm.
than you, and I think a lot of people, even in podcasting, they just think about, "I'm doing this, I want more listeners, I want that, return on investment," whereas
Mhm.
it's not about you, especially if you're doing, audio drama. It's, it's a totally, like, written story by you or by you and a team. It's like so much more than just you. And that also is valid for when you're thinking about, when you're worried or you're like anxious, are people going to listen to it? Like, you just do your job, like put intention behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather have impacted like 5 people where like the way this story, had an effect on their life is so great. I would rather have 5 people who really came away with like learning something from this or feeling something and it like is the most important thing to them than having 100,000 people listen to it and be like, "Well, that was a podcast," you know? Like, I listen to so many shows that my brain turns off and I don't even hear what they're saying half the time, but every once in a while, I'll get one. It's like, I have to pay so much attention to this because I love everything I'm hearing. And it's also the idea of making a podcast because you want to make podcasts, not just make a podcast because you have to or you think you have to. You don't have to make a podcast. You don't have to. It's actually people could just not do that. And I find that so much with a lot of the nonfiction stuff is like people feel like they have to make a podcast to talk to their friends. Like you can actually just talk to your friends without recording it.
Without
You don't
recording
have
it.
to.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to do all the other work that goes along it. You could just get on a video call with your friends and like talk about your favorite book for an hour. You don't
Mhm.
you don't have to also record it and edit it and try to market it and try to make money off of it. You could just do things with your friends for fun.
Yeah. So considering it started out with like a small team and you just wanting to, do something that you're
Mhm.
passionate about and you got here and you did it with so much attention to detail and so much work put into it. I just have so much respect for it and like really applaud you for that.
We have, the experience with Valence. We're able to help others who are, just starting out or just want to. We can give them like, "Hey, listen, we've been here. This is what you should probably be doing. Do your own thing. I don't care if you do it your own way, but I'm telling you, we did it that way and it was bad." But we also have the resources now to be able to support some smaller creators. Like we brought on last year, we brought on Desperado, that's made by Sammy Sweezy, and brought him into the network. He had an existing show. We were fans of the show. We had already done promo swaps and feed swaps with the show years before, and he was looking for someone to, host the show. So he was with a network before. And we'd never done any outside shows besides ones that just we had made ourselves. We're like, well, if we're going to take in anybody, it's going to be Sammy, right? It's going to be Sammy. We love Sammy. And Desperado is similar enough in themes to Valence that we could justify, like we could have both of these shows and they're similar, so that makes sense. So we brought on Sammy and after, that season of Desperado aired, Sammy's like, "I actually wanna make another show, but I don't know how I'm gonna pay for it." I'm like, "Well, we can help with that, right? We can help with that." So, we ran a crowdfunding campaign. It actually the crowdfunding atmosphere right now sucks. It's real bad, especially for fiction. You can look up I work with a couple other people, and we have a chart where we actually have been keeping track of every fiction podcast crowdfunding campaign for, like, the last, like, 7 years or something like that, and it's hundreds and hundreds of campaigns, and you can see where, like, the trends started to be where they're not getting any money anymore, and people aren't supporting them, and it kinda aligns with social media going sideways and getting so splintered off, but we still, through our other, work with Hug House, are able to meet figure out how to still pay for this show. So, Sammy made the pilot of the new show Levian. I was like, "I'd really like to, make more of this, but I can't afford to do it on my own." And we're like, "Well, we can help you with that." So, we were like, "How much did the pilot cost you?" And, came up with a budget for the remaining season. Realistically, we're like, "You have to pay yourself, Sammy. If you're gonna pay yourself, how much would you pay? If you're gonna pay somebody else, how much would you pay?" Think about it that way. That's how much you should pay yourself, because a lot of creators will undervalue their own work. So, I try to think about it. If you're gonna hire somebody else, what would you pay? All right, that's what you're getting paid now.
But yeah, what would I pay myself versus when I think
Mhm,
of what would I pay someone else is definitely very different. And like people do undervalue
mhm,
themselves so much, especially when they do it with passion. So like being kept on the right track
mhm.
for your own sake is so important.
Right. So, our crowdfunding campaign for Levian didn't raise a lot of money, but because we have other stuff that we do, and we have our existing Patreon that brings in some money, and we work in other spaces in podcasting, we have enough money at Hug House to be able to pay for a portion of the production of Levian. So, and we're still looking into other ways to be able to pay for more of it. So we asked, what would you pay somebody else? What did you pay out for voice acting for episode 1, the pilot that you made? And then we paid Sammy that. And it was a good chunk of money, and, paid him for the work that he did on sound designing and writing the episode for the pilot. We're like, "We want you to make sure that you get something out of this. Even if it turns into nothing, we want you to make sure you got the money for the pilot." And he was like, "You really didn't have to do that. I did it on my own." And we're like, "No, no, no. Listen. We're paying everybody for their work. We're not gonna be unfair about it."
Yeah.
So, we're still hoping to be able to do that with the rest of the season and with
Mhm.
other shows we make going forward. We have some too many irons going on. We've got so many things. Will just came up with a new podcast yesterday.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
brains I'm working with right now.
I want to hear what
Yeah,
it's
no,
about
there's a new one.
after this.
I can't tell you. Yeah, I'll tell you later.
And I wanted to ask then, I
Yeah.
mean, are you doing crowdfunding at the moment for any show or for any upcoming season or okay.
Not right at the moment. We've always got our Patreon running for Hug House. It's
Go
patreon.com/hughousepods.
and subscribe.
Um, Go and subscribe, listen to us. We put out, early releases of all of our content. We put out some behind the scenes stuff if we have it. We've got a new show hopefully launching in November, but we keep pushing it off because it's a lot of work and we're not being paid for it. So we're like, it's for fun, not fiction, just a us hanging out kind of show.
Oh,
'Cause
cool.
they're a little less effort. They're a little less effort for us to do, so we can do those and release them, as we have episodes instead of waiting for a whole season to be done.
Yeah, and that sounds like a
Um,
lot of fun, and I'm sure people, like, would love to get to know you guys more.
Hopefully, that's the idea, but it's not just us. We've got other, like, hosts on the shows because, we wanna make sure that we are showing more diversity than just me and Will. 'Cause we're not. So we have Elena Fernandez-Collins, who's audio dramatic and does all kinds of newsletters and podcast critic and has been in the space for forever. They work with us at Hug House, and then Giancarlo Herrera works with us too. He's part of Whimsic Productions. He has his own shows, but he was Luis in season 1 of Valence and also 2 and 3 because we kept bringing his character back. And he's great and we love him, so we're like, "We need to do more work with him." So we made something where we could talk to him more. So
Okay. Awesome. Well, before you go, I'm going to ask you a classic question. What advice would you give to yourself when you started out that you would also give to other podcasters who are thinking of getting into audio fiction specifically?
Easy, but, like,
Difficult.
what one thing do I pick,
Mhm.
Like, if I really had to give, like, one piece of
Okay,
advice,
you can pick 3
um
if you want.
oh, I could pick 3? No, I'm gonna pick 1. I think I have a good one. It's don't push yourself and just take your time to really make the show and the content that you want to make. Don't give yourself deadlines that are too tight that you know you're not gonna be able to meet, and don't get upset with yourself if you don't meet them. Nobody's gonna yell at you. Nobody's gonna get mad at you. You can you can take time. It's okay. It's creative. There's no time limit on creativity. So just enjoy the process. Don't force it. If you're not enjoying it, then why are you doing it?
Mhm.
Because there's not a lot of money in fiction podcasting. Everybody knows that. So if there's not money in it, it gotta be the enjoyment.
Mhm.
So so make sure you're having fun while you're doing it. Because if not, what's the point? It's
Yeah. And I think doing it with other people is like a big part of what made it so fun for Hug House. And like that
Yeah.
didn't only show for your experience, but also for listeners, right?
Yeah, that's the whole reason why we enjoyed it is because it was friends working together to make this show and to create something that we believed in and we love, and other people, ended up loving too, and that was a great, after effect that we weren't sure would happen, but we are grateful it did, and we're excited for, everything else that we've got coming up.
Nice. Thank you so much, Anne. And okay, before we go, just let our listeners know where they can find you and where they can find Hug House and where they can support you guys. In which ways?
Yeah. You can find Hug House at hughouse.productions is our website. And honestly, social media, we're not really anywhere anymore, except sometimes on Tumblr because it's the only place that isn't aggressive towards creators and the world. So we don't really post on Facebook and we don't post on Twitter at all anymore. Sorry, X. We don't
Fair.
post on it. So, and I'm not big on Instagram, so I'm not there. So you can find me on Hug House's shows.
Yes. And I'm sure you want to hang out with Anne after this interview.
Oh
Anne
yeah,
is
for sure,
lovely.
right?
Thank you so much, Anne.